Hello there. What is going on, everyone? Today it's time for my full review of Star Wars Shatterpoint. I'm going to be talking primarily about the game as it applies to the core box. So I'm not necessarily reviewing all of the rest of the content that's out for it, but I am certainly taking into consideration that this game is definitely expandable, but I'm really focused on what the core set gaming experience gives you as I factor it into this review. This was, of course, a review copy that Atomic Mass Games sent out. So again, big thank you to Atomic Mass Games for sending this out. If you want to learn more about Star Wars Shatterpoint, want to read up on the rules, check out some of the latest releases, news, all that great stuff, I have a link down in the video description below. If you choose to use that link to learn more about the game, it's going to tell AMG that that you got referred to them from me, so it kind of helps me, helps them, helps everybody, and hopefully it helps you learn more about the game. So if you definitely use those links, again, the description below, that will be very, very helpful. But with all of that being said, let's go ahead and do our review. So I want to talk a little bit about Star Wars Shatterpoint as a whole. It's a miniature skirmish game. It takes place on a 3x3 board, and it comes with terrain, all of that. The whole experience is designed, I think, to be newer player friendly while also appealing to experienced gamers, and all of that kind of factors in. So I think the first thing I want to talk about is the miniatures. Now, this game definitely has some miniature assembly required. You're definitely going to have to put miniatures together and possibly paint them if you want to. This is a game that is targeted towards hobby players. If you are a hobby player, you're in for a treat because these miniatures offer extremely great detail. They have beautiful dynamic poses, and they have just exquisite sculpting, and they're in very realistic proportions too. That certainly may appeal to a lot of players that were looking for maybe heads that weren't comically oversized and in proportion with the rest of their body. So I love the detail on these miniatures. I like a lot of the poses. Most of them are exceptional. There's very few that I was even only neutral about. Most of them were very, very nicely done. I also really like a lot of the sculpting as it applies to certain items that normally would be very hard to paint by hand. I'm talking about like decals on helmets. There's a lot of that. Tattoos on characters. A lot of these are actually sculpted into the miniature to make it a little bit easier for you to paint. These are things that might have had to have been done freehand on older games or different games, or in previous sculpts and different miniatures. Here they've like raised the surfaces or sunken the surfaces in to make it easier to get a lot of those decals done. So that's definitely a big positive. But not everything on the miniatures is purely positive. I do have some concerns. For example, some of the lightsabers. The lightsabers are very, very thin, and they are probably more likely to break than a lot of other lightsabers. I've already had multiple breaks and had to re-glue them. Now, this isn't something that's unique to this game, but because of how thin they are, they feel a little bit more fragile, so you're going to have to be extra careful with these. And of course, you should treat them well and be careful with them anyway, but they can be less forgiving, especially with like Maul and how wide his lightsaber blade sticks out. You're going to have to be very, very careful with them because they're very delicate. Also, I guess one noteworthy thing is it's both a pro and a con. While you do have some customization options for these, where a lot of helmeted characters, or at least named helmeted characters, have the option of like maybe taking off their helmet, or in some cases you have different weapon options that you can put on other characters. There are also a lot of characters that don't have any customization options at all. And I think that's one thing that I'd like to see improved in the future, is to give each miniature some customization options, whether it applies to like the direction that you're going to pose their arms, like giving you the option of like having a rifle like pointed straight up or to the side or up in the air or directly at your opponent straight ahead. More options like that would be really nice in the future if they can do it. And also more helmet options, I think, in the future would be good too. But overall, that one's kind of 50-50 because some of the characters have excellent customization options when some have none. Now, as far as the concept itself, as to what Star Wars Shatterpoint is, it's got some great things going for it. Overall, I like the fact that gameplay is faster. This is a big deal for a lot of the games that I play. You tend to require a large surface area and have a lengthy playtime of multiple hours. Star Wars Legion can take a very long time. And now, granted, tournament games are timed, forcing you to play faster, but even just casual games and learning games in Star Wars Shatterpoint go very fast. I've had some games complete before a single character has activated more than once. When I say a single character, I mean I have like at least one character that happens to have not gone once. Not, there's certain characters that have gone multiple times, and you have a Shatterpoint card which gives you flexibility, so you can force certain characters to activate additional times. But if you're trying to slow roll somebody, like basically like my first character activated on the first turn might not go again the rest of the game, because the game can potentially be over before that. That's not always the case, but that can happen. It's just more of a testament to that at the pace of play, especially as you start to learn how to do it, the game structure can go very, very quickly, and you can get multiple games in an hour. And when that gameplay being fast happens, it's not necessarily like, oh, the game was rushed. I feel like even in faster games, you're still getting a very thematic and challenging and tactful or tactical rather, experience. So I feel like you're getting the full Star Wars experience in half the time as other games, and I think that's definitely a positive. I also think it's good that the game plays on a 3x3 surface and that it was designed for such. You're able to still get a lot of battlefield area control into the game, and the areas feel distinct, while at the same time that makes it easier for stores to have play space available for this game. It makes it easier for most families to have a kitchen table kind of game, whereas like a 6x3 or 6x4 or odd, war game size tables. I know like Age of Sigmar is a weird, thing, and as certain other games that I play have awkward table sizes and require very weird play mats. This one being on a 3x3 just makes it more convenient and easy to play, and so I think that's definitely a positive. I also really like the fact that it has open list building. That's something I've liked from the beginning when they first announced it. It allows me to create a dream team of characters that I've always wanted to put together, or characters that shouldn't be together at all, but I just think it would be hilarious to do. Like if I want Darth Maul to team up with Anakin Skywalker, I can do that in this game. Now, at the same time, there are synergies in this game that reward thematic lists and reward lists that should or could work together, in canon. If I'm running Maul and Anakin Skywalker together, they're not really going to do a whole lot for each other, and I probably will suffer for trying to do that. If I want to have Captain Rex with some B1 battle droids, I'm sacrificing a ton of synergy that I could otherwise have if I picked something that was more appropriate, like other clones. And so I love the way that it rewards you for building a thematic list, but doesn't force you to do that. So you have, I think it caters to both camps, because I know some people have their opinions on they like want a game to be only thematic, or they want a game to be completely wide open. And this one, it really encourages both and allows for both, and is rewarding for both ways. Because if I want to just make a completely crazy list that shouldn't even work, well, you know what? I'm going to do that, and it probably won't work that great, but I'll still be allowed to have fun while I'm doing it. And I think that's something that this game really excels at, and it was something I was very happy to see as part of its kind of designed core rule structure. Now, as far as the core concept itself, I think a lot of people are going to equate it to the obvious similarities it has with certain other games that are out there. I think Marvel Crisis Protocol has an awful lot of overlap. While they're not the same game, when I'm playing Star Wars Shatterpoint, I am constantly reminded of Marvel Crisis Protocol. There's a lot of mechanics in this game that are very similar to Marvel Crisis Protocol. And of course, there's a lot of similarities overlapping with Star Wars Legion. I'm repainting, Anakin Skywalker again. I'm repainting B1 battle droids again. So obviously the fact that it's dudes on a map with, Star Wars characters, that I've got a lot of those already for Legion, and they're in a similar but not the same kind of size scale, is obviously going to draw a lot of criticism, and obviously is something to mention. But despite all that, I think this game still succeeds. One I guess, wish list item that I had hoped that this game would have had that it doesn't have is the ability to throw terrain. I joked around with Will Schick about, can I throw the Senate if I'm playing, Sheev Palpatine? Can I throw the Senate at Yoda? And that's not something that that is built into the core rules, is the ability to throw terrain. That is one key difference from Marvel Crisis Protocol. And I know there are reasons why they chose not to do that, but it's still kind of a wish list item that I think you should be able to do, because it feels like I should be able to use the Force and fling at least smaller terrain pieces at my enemies. That's something that I would have liked. As far as the core box itself, as far as what you're getting with this, there's definitely some pros and cons. One of the big pros is that you're getting 2 full builds. I'm able to play against another person, and they don't have to bring their own army. Of course, they may want to, and I think after you play a couple of games, they'll be incentivized to buy into the game on their own. But if all I have is this core box, you and I can both sit down and play a full game. That's a big deal. It's not a half game or just a learning game. It's going to be a full game. I'm going to have a full 6-unit list. You're going to have a full 6-unit list, 2 strike teams, a full squad. And there's even some mixing and matching that you can do within just the core set. Like, for example, building a full Mandalorian build. You can try and do that and make that have a little bit of synergy if you wanted to min-max. So you can definitely do all of that. That's a big plus for the core set. Also, you're getting a lot of terrain in the core set to kind of allow for a full game to be played. I think in the long term, you will probably want to add more terrain in the same ways that long term you're going to want to add more characters. I'd love to pick up Obi-Wan Kenobi and have some more clones and get some even greater clone synergy and things like that. That's something that this core set is going to have you doing. It's going to have you wanting more, but you don't need to have more. You're getting a complete gaming experience minus the playmat, basically, and you don't have to use a play mat. You can just mark off a 3x3 area, right? Or you could even, honestly, if you want to, you could do a slightly different, it's actually 2.5 by 2.5. Okay, you can still do it, won't be tournament legal, but you can still have fun, play on any surface you want. Whereas 3x3 works a lot better. So no, I like that you're getting that full experience in there. I also like that you're getting a pretty diverse character selection in the core box. You're getting some Jedi, you're getting some droids, you're getting some clones, and you're getting some Mandalorians. And you're seeing some examples of how synergy works in smaller groups, and it kind of opens the door. It's a great way to kind of paint the picture of the future of what expanding the game and buying some expansions can offer you without you having to do it. So that's kind of a big deal. So I like that quite a bit. Now, here are some negatives. I feel like the core set should have more dice in it. It kind of suffers from that problem that all Star Wars games have always had. You always need more dice than what comes in the core set. So I'm going to have to get a dice pack. You get a decent amount of dice. It's not that bad. It's not as bad as other games, but we're seeing situations in just core set units that want to roll more dice than they can. So I'm having to I'll roll some more, I'll re-roll, I'll record the results and then roll some more dice afterwards and just add those to it. That's something that you have to do with the core set in some cases, but not 100% of the time. And so it would be nice if there was maybe just 2 or 3 more dice of each type, which again is just a good incentive to go out and get a dice pack. But at $165 for the core set, a lot of people may not want to have to go out and get another dice pack, which is really the other negative I have for the core set, despite the fact that it comes with so much. And I do think it's a good value for what it has. 2 full armies, at least a full light table's worth of terrain. You're getting a lot of terrain in here. It's beautiful terrain. It's really good terrain. You're getting a lot in this core set, but despite all that, you're still at $165 price tag, which does make it the most expensive Star Wars game in a very long time to buy into for that core set. A lot of people probably aren't going to be able to look past that, at least at first. I think the fact that it is so complete and has so very much means a lot of people may be able to buy this and not have to buy anything else, and they'll be able to go out and have a competitive build straight out of the box without having to add expansions, but or at least not having to add many. And again, dice, you don't have to buy more dice. You can record results and re-roll if you need to, and there's only a few cases where you're going to have to buy more dice. But as far as the core set as a whole, overall, it is expensive, but it gives you some really great stuff. Lastly, I want to talk about the gameplay itself. I've really enjoyed the gameplay. I think the rules are simple enough and fairly straightforward without being too complex. I think the struggle and basically the mission system allow for enough satisfying gameplay where one player, even the player who's behind, is pretty likely to at least win one struggle. You're playing best 2 out of 3 struggles. And there's a good catch-up mechanic in there as you reveal new mission cards, letting the player who didn't win the first struggle have a pretty good chance at choosing the right struggle that's going to put them ahead for the second struggle, basically giving you a best 2 out of 3 that usually goes to the third struggle. And I like that. I think that's a good way to reward both players. It's a good way to make this game also family friendly, which is, I think that's important to me. I think, you know, if you play with a new gamer, a newcomer, or even younger gamers, or if you're wanting to play with your kids, even if your kids aren't that good at the game, they're probably going to be able to at least score one of the 2 struggles, right? The best 2 out of 3. It's probably going to come down to best 2 out of 3 most of the time, which is rewarding because nobody really wants to play a game where they just get completely stomped and don't accomplish anything in the whole game. And even if you're not very good at Shatterpoint, you have a pretty good chance at scoring at least one of those struggles. So I think that's a pretty cool thing. It also lets you play with your toys. And what I mean by that is, like, maybe you've painted up these miniatures and you're really happy to get, you know, Anakin Skywalker out there in the middle of the battlefield. And what happens if your opponent says, oh, you know what? Focus fire, everybody kill Anakin Skywalker. That's happened to me a lot in other games where I have like a centerpiece for my build and they happen to end up in a bad position and they just get killed before I even get to do anything with them. In this game, that can't happen. Even if no matter how much damage you put on somebody, that at most they're just going to get wounded and flip it over to an injured side next turn, then they get to keep going. Even if they then die and have enough damage to completely take them off the board, you still get one more activation with them. They always get that final activation before they're removed from the table. So, you know, basically anybody on the game, you're going to at least be able to activate them 2 whole times. At least out of everybody we've seen so far. Some characters, most of the named characters, can go even more than that. But you're going to at least get 2 activations out of just about anybody. So that's a pretty cool thing that you're going to at least be able to play with your toys even if they are doomed to be killed and removed from the board. You still get to activate them. And so I think that's a pretty cool thing. Of course, it's got pros and cons because it means that if you're like a deathmatch kind of skirmish player, this game isn't going to really have very much killing and removing of miniatures off the board. You can get characters removed from the board, but it is hard to do, harder than it seems, and it's nearly impossible to table somebody. You'd have to both be deliberately trying to make that happen and not trying to score objectives and make the game proceed in order to actually fully be tabled. But you know, then again, you know, it's worth trying one of these days, I'm sure. Now, it also has pretty cool use of the high ground. It's very interesting the way that they've made the high ground so important, and the way that the terrain, as far as like ingress points, are very smooth and work out very well. And there's enough characters that have jumping and flying kind of abilities to make the high ground both attainable and important because of the cover and also the rules for controlling objectives. You know, whoever has the high ground where that objective is at is going to be able to control it that much easier. Although you can control stuff from underneath, you can only do that if nobody is above you. And so it really puts a lot of emphasis on the high ground, allowing for more thematic play, in some cases more realistic play. You're going to want to be above whoever you're shooting at, and so I like the way that a lot of the rules are written for that, but not all of them. I think cover is written a little sloppy, and they've actually just had to put out a recent kind of a 2.0, or not a 2.0, but an errata to some of the rules with cover, which now you can only benefit from cover if you have a hunker token. So if you're trying to do that. Now that makes sense, and that goes a long way towards making things seem a little bit more realistic, but it still doesn't change certain awkward situations where you have 2 characters that are on a gantry that are shooting at each other, you know, from the same walkway with no piece of terrain in between them except for the terrain that they're standing on. and that terrain provides cover to them if they happen to have a hunker token, which is weird because you're standing out in the middle of nowhere. How is the gantry giving you cover? And so it kind of requires you to use your imagination, like, well, maybe I'm ducked down on the gantry and I'm spider crawling underneath of it or something like that. So there are going to be a couple of abstract scenarios that can happen in this game because of the way the cover rules are written that might not seem super realistic. And I think that's a mixed bag. Sometimes you have to have rules like that to make the game flow cohesively, but at the same time, it does kind of take you out of the thematic element of it. And also, I think the momentum structure, while it gives a little bit of a catch up and a come from behind mechanic, it prevents like a little bit of a runaway leader problem. At the same time, in the games that I have played so far, momentum hasn't really felt like it mattered. And what I mean by that is whoever tends to get out to an early lead, even if the come from behind player starts gaining momentum to try to make it up, the person who was in the lead at the first has always ended up winning that particular struggle. So that the momentum that kind of tends to favor the player who's behind, it hasn't ever made the difference that you kind of would want it to make. It's never allowed for a surprise. Oh, I now pulled it and I got to come from behind win. Like that's never happened. Whoever kind of gets out to an early lead, and at least in the core set games that I've played, and those have mostly been heroes versus villains, kind of the thematic experience. Has been my experience so far. I don't expect that to always be the case, but that's some of my initial observations. Overall, I think that Star Wars Shatterpoint is a very fun experience. I love the area control aspect of it and how it makes it feel very different from any other Star Wars game that I've played before. It's definitely got combat, but it's not combat focused. It's more movement and ability focused than combat focused, but combat has movement and abilities tied into it, and the way the character trees work is very, very interesting to me. And the combat trees, with like when you're doing damage, you're not just doing straight damage. You're maybe hitting them in a place that's going to push them back, and just allows for a lot of different scenarios to happen. Overall, it's a very fun and tactical game. The tactics that go into this game are surprisingly satisfying, and I have enjoyed every game that I've played of Star Wars Shatterpoint. I don't think it's necessarily going to take its place at the #1 favorite spot of all Star Wars games that I play, but it definitely has earned a place at my table, and I think you should check it out. And if you want to learn more, I've got more videos. I'll be putting links over here at the end. So again, big thanks to Atomic Mass Games for sending Star Wars Shatterpoint to me. I'll be sure to be picking up more expansions and bringing you guys more coverage of this game, so be sure to stay tuned. And we also do giveaways all the time on this channel. We're currently doing a big Star Wars Shatterpoint core set giveaway in the form of a $165 Amazon gift card. And usually to enter any of my giveaways, you just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. Today's winner is Jamie1909. Congrats, Jamie. You are the winner of the big Star Wars Shatterpoint giveaway. If you just go ahead and shoot me an email at mailcrabbok@gmail.com, I'll get you squared away there. If you didn't win, don't worry. I've got lots more giveaways planned for the future, and there's always more just around the corner. So hopefully you guys enjoy the content and stick around. I will talk to you soon. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Big thanks to AMG, and also big thanks to my patrons. You guys are absolutely amazing and help make this channel possible. I want to thank you all so much for watching. As of today, it is release day for Star Wars Shatterpoint. So head over to your local store, get yourself a copy, maybe buy some expansions, check it out. Let me know what you think. You can also join our Discord. Links are in the description below. Check out for more information. Thank you so much. May the Force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. This is the way. So say we all. The spice must flow. Party on, dudes, and be excellent to each other. And Thundercats, ho!